Hello and welcome back to Pueblo Programming. In today's video, we're going to show you what the types of variables in Python look like, how you can cast different variables into each other, and how to identify which variable is which. First off, let's look to the integer variable, which is int, abbreviated in Python, or int. And it's basically an integer like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 9, 34, 355,000, and 24. Anything like that is an integer. A float, on the other hand, is basically a decimal number. So anything like 3.25907, 3.3, 20.5, 3.0, those will all be decimals or floats. We also have strings, which are a sequence of characters. And the way to identify a string is anything within quotation marks. So it could be a double quotation like this, or it could be single quotations kind of like this. So anything within single quotations like that would also be classified as a string. A Boolean is the fourth type of variable, and it's basically a true or false value. It could be 0, 1, or it could be true or false. And that's basically how you identify a Boolean. They're used to kind of troubleshoot any problems you have in your script. Meanwhile, a string, as we talked about before, is basically anything within these quotation marks. So some variables practice. What type of variables are these? Number one would be an integer. So integer. Number two would be a float. Number three will be a Boolean. Number four would be a string, because notice the quotation marks. It would still be the same if I did this. That would be the same as before, because Python recognizes both single quotation marks and double quotation marks as both indicating strings. And 5, this is a little bit tricky. It's 4, but because it has a decimal point, it's not an integer, but a float. And number 5 is another tricky one. Even though it's an integer of 5, it's within quotation marks, double quotations. Because of that, it's going to be a string. Now we're going to look at how to cast one variable into a different variable if you have them in the workplace in your program. So some variable functions. First off, int, with parentheses, variable of any kind, it could be x, it could be the name of any variable you have, would make that variable turn into an integer. Likewise, a str or string, parentheses, of the variable would turn that into a string. So if you had an integer or a float or a Boolean and you cast this command on it, put it inside the parentheses, it would become a string value. Likewise, if you look at float, it would turn a variable into a float no matter what the variable was like before. So I'm going to show you kind of how these work on the actual terminal. Now, how you get into Python, basically type in Python at the command prompt, enter, and here you are in Python. How we instantiate a variable, and that's very important, is that we set something equal to something else. So you have x be the variable name equal to 5. So basically what you said right here is that the variable x will be instantiated with a value of 5. If we did something called var equal 10.3, you basically store the value of 10.3 within the variable called var. Now to show you some of the actual casting functions. So we see int, parentheses, string parentheses, and float parentheses. So we did int, var, enter. You'll see that it took the float, rounded it to the closest integer, and cast it into 10. So 10.3 rounded to the closest integer would be 10. Likewise, if we did float x, which was originally 5 up here, enter, you'll see that I cast 5 into a decimal or float number 5.0. And now, if we were to use the last one, which would be string, if you just string var, enter, you see that var was equal to 10.3. Now, 10.3 still, but it's within single quotation marks, which designates it as a string. Same thing if you did string x, it's going to give you quotation marks around 5, so it's a string. And now let's say you wanted to save this, because if you notice above, we did integer var and turned it to 10. But then we called on var again, and it's still called on the var equal to 10.3. If you wanted to save this 10 as a new var, you would basically put down var is equal to int var. Enter. Now let's see what var is. Print var. Enter. It's 10. So that's how you would reinstantiate a variable for a new value. And this is our basic rundown of how commands work, how variables work in Python. And stay tuned for more tutorials on Python, and thank you.